Hey y'all, welcome to Pleiadian Point of View. I'm Peyton with Peyton Energetics, and as you can probably guess, I'm a Pleiadian channel. So in this week's Point of View, the Pleiadians wanted to talk to us about timelines. They said that this is an area that they see a lot of the awakened community getting a little confused about, and they wanted to help us understand what is happening right now. Now, if you have been listening to the Pleiadians over the past 2 years or so, you have heard them talk on many occasions about how we are going through a splitting of timelines right now. And sometimes they refer to this as the paths are separating. And what they are generally referring to when they say this is that those souls who have chosen to ascend in this lifetime are separating or splitting off in terms of their manifested reality from those souls who have made another choice. So we sometimes refer to this in the spiritual community as ascension timelines versus lower timelines. And this is something that every soul chooses for him or herself. And what is going on right now that the Pleiadians wanted to clarify for us is that we're in a kind of an awkward transitional phase where we can still see people who are making vastly different choices than what we are choosing. And so this can be very confusing to lightworkers and starseeds because there is a tendency as humans to look around at the world around us and assume that we are all in the same boat. That this means if we look around and we see chaos in the world around us, that we are on that timeline. And so the Pleiadians wanted to let us know that that is not the case. What is really going on, according to the guides, is we are actually well into the separation of timeline process. And this is something that the guides have been telling us for about 2 years to be very diligent with our focus and our frequency, because every day we are choosing the train track that we are on. And so what is happening now is we can look around at the world around us and think we are on the same train as some of the people who are choosing to have very dense experiences. But according to the Pleiadians, just because we can see something in our reality doesn't mean that we are on that timeline. So what is happening, according to the Pleiadians, is we can still see things that are not actually on our timeline. And so one example or way to look at this is it's almost like there are glass barriers between the timelines now. So we may be able to see someone who are choosing a non-ascension path, and we certainly see much of our world that is choosing to remain in density, that is choosing to get involved in the 3D circus and is not taking advantage of the opportunity to become more conscious, to expand themselves. But that doesn't mean that they are on our timeline. So you can think of this as being behind a glass window or a glass wall. And think of it as if you are going to the zoo or to SeaWorld and you're watching the dolphins in the tank. You can look at this beautiful underwater world, but you're not worried about getting wet just because you can see it. And that's how our world is operating right now. We can still see people who are choosing very different paths, but that doesn't mean that we are on that path ourselves, just because we can see it. So according to the Pleiadians, what is happening is we are giving ourselves the opportunity to see all of the choices that are on the table in front of us, to see what we choose. And we choose, as the Pleiadians say over and over again, with our frequency and our focus. So all of the shiny toys that are happening in the 3D world all of those lovely stories intended to distract us and mislead us, we are kind of testing ourselves to see, are we going to fall for the bait? Are we going to let ourselves be distracted by the shiny toys of the lower timelines? Or are we going to stay focused on where we are headed, what we are trying to create? Because just because someone else is choosing it doesn't mean it's in our reality. According to the guides, you can be standing right next to someone in a completely different reality. So just because someone else is choosing anger or fear or getting wrapped up in all the stories that we have to tempt us and distract us doesn't mean that you have to. And this is a matter of personal choice. You are choosing your timeline with your attention, with your focus. So as the Pleiadians are saying, we are testing ourselves as part of our ascension process to see whether we are going to fall for the bait of the lower timelines. Are you going to look at what other people are choosing and fall into judgment? Are you going to listen to all these flashy stories of what is supposedly happening in the world and get into anger or fear? If so, you are choosing with your focus, with your frequency, to drop to the timeline of that story. And that is why the Pleiadians have been kind of a broken record over the past 2 years, telling us time and time again, now is the time to be diligent about what we are focused on. Because if we allow ourselves to be distracted by the shiny toys, we use our free will to step onto a lower timeline. And this is all about free will. And you vote with your free will, with your focus and your frequency. So the Pleiadians always like to reassure us that we don't have to worry about what anyone else is doing, that it can't affect us unless we judge it, unless we fear it, or unless we get angry about it. Because as we do that, we put ourselves into resistance, using our free will to focus on that thing, that person. And when we do that, we choose to attach to a lower timeline. But if we can be neutral, if we can observe what is going on around us. Now, super important caveat here. The Pleiadians are never telling us to be in denial. They are never telling us to suppress what we truly feel. So if you are looking at things that are triggering you, it is critically important to process that energy. This is super, super, super important, because if we are being in denial, if we are just distracting ourselves from things that are really distressing us, if we are numbing ourselves with substances, if we are avoiding things because they trigger unpleasant emotions in us, it means we have healing work to do. So I always have to remind all of us, including myself, that when the Pleiadians tell us to be diligent with our focus, that they are never talking about denial. So if a story or a person is triggering negative emotion in us, that is energy that is coming to the surface for us to heal and integrate. So it is an opportunity that we are giving ourselves by triggering ourselves to show us where we still have healing work to do. So very, very important caveat. So as we move forward over the coming months, the timelines are going to continue to separate. The separation is going to pick up speed. And the Pleiadians have said it is going to get increasingly difficult to change timelines. So it is always, of course, possible because everything is frequency, but they are telling us we have a very important window right now to make sure we are on the train we want to be on. Because as this process moves forward, And the Pleiadians have said we are nearing the end of this transition tunnel, which means this is the time for everyone to make up their mind as to what their future is going to hold. And we do that with our frequency, our focus, and of course, healing anything that is coming up to be healed. That is what this time period of intense planetary energies is giving us the opportunity to do. So this is the time, y'all, to take this opportunity to look at anything that is still triggering you and heal and integrate that. And then place your focus on what you want to create instead. But we don't want to be distracted by the choices that others are making, because we are still in that tunnel, that time period of choice where all options are on the table. So as we can see, the 3D world is putting on the, master performance of its life, trying to tempt us onto lower timelines. And we are testing ourselves as we evolve. Are we going to choose separation, or are we going to choose love, to choose integration and healing? And this is the time to make that decision. So the guides just wanted to talk a little bit more about this so that we don't get quite so distressed as an awakened community about what we see in the world around us, because you don't have to choose it. You choose everything, and you choose with your frequency. So that is what the Pleiadians wanted to share with us in this week's point of view. I hope it helps you. I'll see you soon.